The night was colder than usual in the small mountain town. The stars were shining above, but the forest was silent. Too silent. John, a middle-aged man with a quiet life, had gone to sleep like every other night. His best friend, a loyal dog named Max, was sleeping at the foot of his bed. John loved Max more than anything. The dog was his only family after his wife had passed away years ago. But when the morning came, everything changed. John woke up with the first light of dawn. He stretched his arms, rubbed his eyes, and called out softly, "Max, come on, boy." Normally, Max would jump up, tail wagging, ready for a walk. But this time there was no sound. The bed was empty. The room was quiet. John frowned. "Max," he called again, louder. Still nothing. His heart skipped a beat. He stood up quickly and walked around the small wooden cabin. The back door was half open. John remembered locking it last night, but now it was swinging gently in the morning wind. His stomach turned. "Max!" he shouted, stepping outside. The mountain air was sharp and cold, filling his lungs as he looked around. The yard was empty. The little wooden fence that circled his home stood still, untouched. The only thing different was the silence. Usually Max's bark would echo across the trees, but now there was nothing but the sound of rustling leaves. John hurried to the edge of the woods. The ground was soft from the night dew, and he could clearly see paw prints leading into the forest. They were Max's prints. His loyal dog had gone into the woods alone in the middle of the night. "Why would you run off?" John muttered, fear growing inside him. He grabbed his coat and flashlight even though the sun was rising. Something about this felt wrong. He remembered last night again, just before sleep, he had heard something strange. A low humming sound like a machine far away in the trees. He thought it was just his imagination, maybe a plane passing in the distance. But now it didn't feel so simple. John followed the trail. The forest was dark even in daylight, tall pines blocking most of the sun. The paw prints led deeper and deeper inside. After a few minutes, John noticed something else. The paw prints were not alone. Beside them were smaller marks. At first he thought they were made by children, but no children lived this deep in the mountains. These footprints were thin, light, and strange. They almost glowed faintly, as if something had burned the ground where they stepped. John crouched down, touching the marks with his fingers. The soil was warm, warmer than it should be in the cold morning. He pulled back quickly, heart pounding. "What on earth is this?" he whispered. For the first time, he felt real fear, not for himself, but for Max. He continued forward. Birds flew away as he passed, their wings loud in the silence. His boots cracked twigs underfoot. Every sound made him tense. He kept calling, "Max, come here, boy." But there was no answer. Only the echo of his own voice came back from the trees. After half an hour of walking, he reached a clearing. The grass was pressed down in a circle, like something heavy had landed there. Around the circle, the ground shimmered as if touched by fire, but there was no smoke, no ashes. Just silence. John froze. The humming sound from last night came rushing back into his memory. It was here. Something had been here. His throat went dry. He looked around desperately for any sign of Max. Then just at the edge of the clearing, he saw a paw print again. Fresh. Max had been here. Relief washed over him, but it was mixed with deeper worry. Because next to Max's paw prints, the strange glowing footprints appeared once more. Smaller, lighter, and they seemed to be... Running, John straightened up, his fists tight at his sides. Something had taken his dog. Something not human. He looked up at the sky. The morning sun was bright now, but he still felt a shadow hanging over him. He had lived in these mountains for years, and he knew every tree, every trail, every sound of the forest. But this was something new, something beyond his world. "Max, hold on," he whispered, voice trembling with both fear and determination. "I'm coming for you." He turned back toward the cabin to gather supplies, but as he stepped away, a faint sound reached his ears. It was soft, like laughter, high-pitched and strange, coming from deeper in the woods. For a moment, John froze. Then he heard it again. Laughter followed by a bark. A very familiar bark. "Max!" Hope flared inside him. He wanted to run, but he forced himself to stay calm. Something was out there with his dog. Something unknown. He couldn't just rush in. He had to be careful. John stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes fixed on the dark forest beyond. Somewhere in there, his dog was alive. But he was not alone. The story of the missing dog was no longer just about a pet. It was about something far bigger, something waiting in the shadows of the mountains, and John knew. His life was about to change forever. The forest was quiet, but John's heart was loud inside his chest. He could not stop thinking about the strange, glowing marks near Max's paw prints. The image of that burned circle in the clearing stayed in his mind. Something had landed there, something not from this world. But now there was no time to think. Max was still missing. John walked back to the cabin only long enough to grab his backpack, some food, a rope, and his old hunting knife. He slipped on stronger boots and filled a bottle of water. Every second felt heavy. Every moment away from Max felt like betrayal. When he returned to the woods, the air seemed different. Colder, but also alive, like the trees were holding their breath. The sun shone weakly through the tall pines, and shadows moved like restless animals. John kept his flashlight ready, though it was still morning. He followed the paw prints again, deeper into the forest. At first, the trail looked normal. Max's paws pressed into the soft dirt. But then slowly the other marks appeared. They were not like human footprints. They were too narrow, too long, and the toes seemed stretched, almost delicate like the feet of dancers. And yet each step left a faint glow behind, as if the ground remembered the touch. John crouched low, staring at one of them. He placed his hand inside the mark, comparing sizes. His hand was bigger, but the footprint was not small like a child's. It was different, strange, alien. The soil under his fingers felt warm again, almost pulsing like a heartbeat. He pulled his hand back quickly. A whisper left his lips. This is not possible. But deep inside, he knew it was real. Something beyond his understanding was walking in these woods, and it was walking with his dog. John pushed forward. His boots pressed the earth hard, but the glowing prints looked weightless. Whoever or whatever made them was light, graceful, almost floating. But the speed was clear. The prints showed running, stopping, circling. Whoever they were, they had been playing. His throat tightened. Was Max playing with them, or running from them? The trail led him to another small clearing. This one was different. The trees bent slightly inward as though something had brushed past them. The ground was scattered with pine needles, and in the middle lay something shining. John bent down slowly and picked it up. It was small, round, and metallic, no bigger than a coin. It glowed faintly blue. His fingers trembled as he turned it over. Strange symbols were etched into the surface, thin lines and curves that seemed to move when he blinked, as if alive. It was not human. John slipped it into his pocket, fear crawling up his spine. Then he froze. A sound came from the trees, not laughter this time, but whispers, high-pitched, fast, almost like a language he could not understand. The voices were soft, carried by the wind, but they were close. John stepped back, pressing against the nearest tree. He held his breath, eyes searching the shadows. His pulse hammered in his ears. Then he saw them. Two small figures moved between the trees, quick and light. Their shapes were slim, shorter than children, but their heads seemed slightly larger. Their skin, pale and silver-like, reflected the dim light of the forest. And their eyes, big, round, glowing faintly, searched the ground as if looking for something. John's heart almost stopped. Aliens. They were real. One of them bent down and touched the dirt, her fingers brushing the footprints. The other stood close, scanning the trees nervously. John held his breath tighter, afraid even a blink might give him away. And then in the silence, he heard it, a bark. Max. The dog rushed into the clearing, tail wagging, jumping happily around the two figures. He licked one of their small hands, and they giggled, a soft musical laugh that sounded almost human. Tears filled John's eyes. Relief hit him hard. Max was alive, unharmed, even happy. But the shock of what he was seeing almost crushed him. His loyal dog was playing with creatures not from Earth. He wanted to run forward, call Max, pull him back, but something stopped him. The look on the girls' faces. They were not monsters. They were not hunters. They were children. John's breath shook. The truth hit him suddenly. They were not here to hurt Max. Max had chosen to stay with them. One of the girls whispered in that strange tongue again, and the other nodded. They hugged Max like he was their own. John's legs felt weak. His entire world had turned upside down in a single morning. But as he stood frozen, a dark sound echoed far away, a deep rumble, mechanical, Heavy. The alien girls stiffened. Their glowing eyes filled with fear. They grabbed Max and pulled him close, hiding behind his fur. John's skin crawled. If these girls were afraid, then something worse was out there. And for the first time, John realized his missing dog had led him into something far more dangerous than he ever imagined. John stood hidden behind a tall pine tree, his breath shallow, his eyes fixed on the clearing. His heart was torn between joy and fear. Max was alive. Max was safe. But Max was not alone. The dog wagged his tail happily, playing with two small figures who were unlike anything John had ever seen. They were not animals. They were not human children. They were something else. The girls looked fragile, with skin so pale it almost glowed like moonlight. Their hair was thin and silver, drifting softly around their heads like silk threads. Their eyes were the strangest of all, large, round, glowing faintly with a light that seemed to come from inside. They looked at Max with wonder, petting him, hugging him as though he was their protector. John's chest tightened. He wanted to call Max. He wanted to rush forward and pull him away. But something in the girls' movements stopped him. They were not hurting his dog. They were laughing, soft, high-pitched giggles like little bells ringing in the forest. Max trusted them. Still, John could not move. His legs were heavy, frozen with fear and disbelief. His world had changed in a single morning. The taller girl suddenly looked up, her glowing eyes sweeping across the trees. John's heart jumped. He pressed himself against the pine, praying she would not see him. For a moment, their eyes almost met. John felt his stomach twist, but then she turned back to Max and smiled. John let out a shaky breath. He watched them more closely now. The smaller girl seemed younger, maybe no older than 7 or 8 if compared to humans. She held Max's ear gently, whispering something in a language John could not understand. The taller one, perhaps her sister, was protective, always keeping an eye on the trees. They looked scared. Not of Max, not of the forest, but of something else. John remembered the deep mechanical rumble he had heard earlier. The sound that had made the girls stiffen. Whatever it was, they were running from it. Children, John whispered under his breath. They're just children. His fear slowly shifted. These were not dangerous monsters. These were lost, frightened girls far away from home, and somehow his dog had become their friend. But then the younger one spoke. Her voice was soft, trembling, broken with fear. Don't hurt us. John froze. The words were not perfect, but they were clear enough. She was speaking English. His skin prickled. They knew human words. Max barked happily, breaking the heavy silence. The taller girl pulled her sister closer, eyes wide with worry, and looked around the trees again. She knew someone was out there. She knew they were being watched. John felt his hand shaking. He couldn't hide forever. Max would not leave without him, and if these girls were afraid of something, then danger was near. He had to decide now, step forward or lose everything. Slowly, carefully, John stepped out from behind the pine tree. His boots crunched on the forest floor. The sound was small, but to the girls it was thunder. They gasped and clung to each other. The younger one pressed her face into her sister's shoulder, whispering fast in her strange language. The taller girl stood firm, her silver hair catching the light, her glowing eyes locked on John. Max, however, ran straight to him. Max, John whispered with relief, kneeling as the dog jumped into his arms. He hugged him tight, his chest flooding with warmth. For one moment, everything else disappeared. His best friend was safe, but when he looked up, the girls were still staring. Their glowing eyes were full of fear, but also something else. Curiosity. John raised his hand slowly, showing he was not a threat. It's okay, he said softly. I won't hurt you. The younger girl peeked from her sister's shoulder. Her lips trembled. Human? She asked, her voice small, unsure. John's breath caught. She knew the word. Yes, he answered gently. I am human. The girls whispered quickly to each other in their strange tongue. Then the taller one shook her head almost like she did not believe it. Humans. Hurt, she said finally, her voice shaky but clear. John's heart sank. What had they been through? Who had told them humans were dangerous? He shook his head. Not me. I won't hurt you. The silence that followed was heavy. Only the forest breathed with them. Max wagged his tail, moving back to the girls, as if trying to show them that his master was safe too. He barked once, then ran back and forth between John and the children, as if begging them to trust each other. The younger girl slowly reached out. her small fingers trembling. She pointed at John, then at herself, whispering, "No hurt." "Please," John swallowed hard. "No hurt," he promised, pressing a hand to his chest. "I promise." For a moment their fear softened. The taller one loosened her hold on her sister, but her glowing eyes never left John. She was still afraid, still unsure. Then suddenly, the forest shook with that same deep rumble again. The girls froze. Their bodies stiffened, their silver eyes wide with terror. John turned quickly, heart pounding. The sound was closer now, louder, like machines moving through the forest. Trees shook as something massive moved in the distance. The younger girl whispered something urgent to her sister. Tears filled her glowing eyes. John realized the truth. These girls were not just lost. They were being hunted. And now, standing in the same forest with his dog at his side, he was part of it too. The forest seemed to hold its breath. John stood in the clearing, Max wagging his tail happily between him and the two alien girls. The silence was heavy, broken only by the distant mechanical rumble that grew louder with every passing second. The girls clung to each other. Their silver hair glowed faintly in the weak sunlight, their eyes wide, shimmering with fear. They looked so fragile, so small, yet their fear was not of John, it was of something else. But still, they did not trust him. John kept his hands raised, his voice calm. "It's all right," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." The younger girl pressed her face into her sister's shoulder, trembling. Her lips moved and her words came broken, hesitant. "Humans. Hurt, please." "No." John's heart ached. He took a slow step forward, then stopped. He pointed at his chest. "John," he said clearly. Then he pointed at Max. "Max." Max barked once, tail wagging harder, running to the girls again before darting back to John. It was as if the dog understood he was the bridge between them. The taller girl's eyes narrowed, watching carefully. She held her sister close, whispering something quick in their strange language. Then, with a shaky breath, she spoke a single word in English. "Who?" John swallowed, lowering his voice. I am John. Human, friend." He placed a hand slowly over his heart again. "Friend?" The smaller girl peeked out. Her glowing eyes blinked nervously, but Max licked her hand, making her giggle softly through her fear. That small laugh was like a crack in a wall, fragile but real. John's shoulders loosened slightly. "See, Max trusts me. I protect him. I will protect you too." The taller girl did not answer. Instead, her eyes darted toward the trees again. The rumbling sound was closer now, vibrating through the ground like thunder. Her hand trembled as she clutched her sister tighter. John followed her gaze, and for the first time he noticed something moving between the trees. Dark shapes, tall and heavy, shifting like shadows with glowing red lights. His stomach twisted. "They're coming for you," John whispered. The taller girl's lips trembled. She nodded slowly, her voice breaking. "Hunters." The word was simple, but it froze John's blood. Hunters. Whoever they were, these girls were terrified of them. For a moment, John's fear was replaced with anger. These were children. They were small, lost, afraid, and someone was chasing them like prey. He clenched his fist, standing taller. "No," he said firmly. "I won't let them." The girls looked at him, confused. The younger one tilted her head, her glowing eyes wet with tears. "Why, help?" she asked softly. John's throat tightened. He thought of his wife, of the family he had lost, of the empty cabin that had felt so cold before Max. He thought of all the nights he had wished someone would stand beside him when life was cruel. Now two small voices were asking the same. He took a deep breath. "Because you're children, and children should never be hunted." The taller girl stared at him for a long time. Her eyes flickered, unsure if she could believe his words. But Max broke the silence again, barking and running to John, then back to the girls as if begging them to trust each other. Finally, the younger girl whispered, her voice barely audible. "Friend?" John nodded quickly, his voice steady. "Yes, friend." The taller one's eyes softened just slightly. She lowered her guard a little, pulling her sister close, but not in fear this time, in hope. And then, the sound of heavy footsteps shattered the fragile moment. From the darkness of the trees, a tall figure emerged. It was covered in black armor, its face hidden by a mask that glowed faint red. A strange weapon rested in its hands, humming with power. Another figure stepped out behind it, and then another. The hunters were here. The girls gasped, their small bodies shaking. The younger one hid behind her sister, clutching Max tightly. The taller one's lips parted in silent terror, but she did not run. She only stared at John, her glowing eyes begging for an answer. John felt the weight of that look. He was just a man, alone in the forest with his dog. These hunters were armed, dangerous, not from this world. He could turn away now, pretend it wasn't his fight. No one would know. No one would blame him. But as he looked at the trembling girls, he knew he couldn't. John stepped forward, his body between the hunters and the children. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded. "They're with me." The hunters paused, their red eyes fixed on him. Silence stretched like a blade, sharp and unbearable. Max growled low, standing at John's side. The girls clung to each other, whispering desperately, and John, a simple man in the mountains, stood tall against something far beyond his world. This was no longer just about a missing dog. It was about a choice, and John had made his. The hunters had disappeared back into the shadows, but their presence lingered like poison in the forest. John stood still for a long time, listening to the echoes of their mechanical steps fading deeper into the trees. His chest rose and fell heavy, his fists still clenched. Max pressed against his side, sensing his tension. The two alien girls stood close together, their silver hair glowing faintly in the dim light. The younger one held Max's ear like it was her lifeline. The taller one kept her eyes on John, her gaze sharp but uncertain. Finally, John spoke softly. "They'll come back," the taller girl nodded. Her lips parted and her voice, though broken, carried weight. "They always come." John felt anger burning inside him. Why are they hunting you?" The younger girl shivered, whispering something in their strange language. The taller one placed a protective arm around her, as if shielding her even from the question. For a moment John thought she would not answer. But then, with a trembling breath, she did. "We, not wanted," she said slowly, choosing each word carefully. "We escape." John's brow furrowed. "Escape from where?" The taller girl hesitated, then pointed upward at the sky. Her glowing eyes filled with sadness. "Home, far, broken, no mother, no father, only us." John's heart twisted. Orphans. Lost children from the stars. The younger girl looked at him now, tears brimming in her glowing eyes. She placed a small hand against her chest. "Alira," she whispered, giving her name. Then she touched her sister's arm. "Sirius." John swallowed hard, nodding gently. "Alira, Sirius," he pointed to himself. "John," he patted Max's head. "Max." For the first time, the taller girl, Sirius, allowed the corner of her mouth to soften. Not a smile, but something close. John crouched slowly, making sure not to frighten them. His voice was calm, almost fatherly. "Tell me, why do they want you?" Sirius looked away, her silver hair falling across her face. Alira pressed close to her, whispering something in their language again. Finally, Sirius answered, "We, different. Not strong. Not like others, they say. Broken." The word cut John like a knife. His chest ached as he looked at their fragile forms. Children. How could anyone call them broken? Sirius continued, her voice low and halting. "Hunters. Take weak ones. Sell, trade. No care if die. Only..." She trailed off, her small shoulders trembling. John clenched his teeth. Slavery. Exploitation. He had heard stories of cruelty in human history, but to see it now, against children from another world, it filled him with rage. He shook his head firmly. "No, you are not broken. You're alive. You're strong." Alira tilted her head, blinking up at him with wide eyes. "Strong?" John forced a smile, though his chest was heavy. "Yes, very strong. You survived. You found Max. That means something." The younger girl gave a small giggle, weak but real, hugging Max tightly. The dog licked her face, making her laugh louder. The sound warmed the air for a moment, cutting through the cold fear. Sirius, however, stayed serious. She stepped closer to John, her glowing eyes searching his face. "Why help us?" she asked again, firmer this time. John met her gaze steadily. "Because no one should be alone. Not children. Not anyone." For a long time, they just stared at each other. A man from Earth and two lost girls from the stars, their worlds so far apart, yet standing together in the same forest. Finally, Sirius lowered her head. "We trust, a little." John let out a shaky breath. That small sentence was more valuable than anything. Trust. A bridge had been built, but the moment of peace did not last. The wind shifted, carrying the faint hum of machines once again. The hunters were circling back. Their shadows stretched long between the trees, red lights flashing faintly in the distance. John stood quickly. We can't stay here. They'll find us. Saris pulled Alira close, her fear returning. Where go? John thought fast. The cabin was too small, too open. The town was far, and he couldn't risk drawing hunters near people. His mind raced, then he remembered the old mine. A few miles deeper into the mountains, abandoned for decades, hidden under rock and shadow. It wasn't safe forever, but it would buy them time. There's a place, John said firmly. Follow me. Max will guide us. Alira's eyes widened. Safe? John nodded. Safer than here. He reached out a hand. For a moment, neither of the girls moved. Then slowly, Alira stepped forward and placed her tiny glowing hand in his rough, calloused one. Saris hesitated, but when John tightened his grip gently and whispered, I will protect you, she finally nodded. The bond was fragile, but it was real. Max barked once, eager to move, leading the way. John took a deep breath, scanning the trees for shadows. The hunters were coming, but he had something stronger now, a reason to fight. 2 reasons. The truth of the sisters was clear. They were alone, unwanted, hunted. But not anymore, because now they had him. The forest was no longer silent. Every step John took, every breath he drew was drowned by the distant thrum of engines. The hunters were coming closer. The sound was heavy, metallic, echoing through the trees like a storm rolling over the mountains. John kept his pace steady, guiding Alira and Saris through the narrow trails. Max trotted ahead, ears sharp, tail stiff. The dog understood the danger. He barked once, low and warning, before running ahead again to check the path. The girls clung to John's coat. Their glowing eyes darted nervously at every sound. Alira whispered in her strange language, her small fingers trembling as they gripped his hand. Saris walked close, her face set with quiet fear, but her body shielded her younger sister with every step. They are close, Saris whispered in broken English. John nodded. His jaw was tight, his grip on his old hunting knife tighter. I know. The trail bent sharply, leading into a hollow where the old mine waited. Its entrance was nothing more than a jagged black mouth, hidden behind vines and fallen rocks. To anyone else it looked abandoned, forgotten. To John it was hope. There, he pointed. Inside. Max darted in first, sniffing the dark tunnel. The girls followed, their small frames slipping easily between the rocks. John pushed the vines aside, ushering them in quickly. He crouched low, breathing hard as he checked the forest one last time. That's when he saw them. 3 hunters emerged from the trees. Their tall, armored bodies gleamed black, each one carrying weapons that hummed with strange energy. Red lights burned from their masks like eyes of fire. Their movements were sharp, precise, and cruelly patient. John's breath caught. They were tracking, and they were heading straight for the mine. He slipped inside quickly, pulling the vines back over the entrance. Darkness swallowed him. The air inside was damp, heavy with dust and old stone. Water dripped somewhere deep within. Alira clung to Max, burying her face in his fur. Saris stood near John, her glowing eyes shimmering in the dark. They find us, she whispered, voice shaking. John shook his head. Not if we're quiet. But his words felt weak even to himself. The hunters were machines of precision. Hiding would not last long. The sound of footsteps outside grew louder. Heavy boots crunched over pine needles and stone. Then came the hiss of strange scanners, beams of red light sweeping the ground. The hunters were close, too close. Alira whimpered, her glowing eyes filling with tears. John knelt quickly, putting a finger to his lips. Shh, he whispered. It's okay. He placed a hand on Max's back, calming the dog before he barked. Max stayed tense but quiet, his body pressed protectively against the girls. The red light of a scanner suddenly pierced through a gap in the vines. It swept across the ground just outside the mine, pausing near the prints John had left. John's stomach tightened. He held his breath. The beam lingered, then moved on. A metallic voice crackled in a language John could not understand. Another voice answered, deeper, colder. Then came silence again. Saris leaned closer, whispering, They not stop. Always hunt. Always find. Her words were heavy, full of a truth John didn't want to accept. He looked at the 2 small girls huddled in the shadows. They had been hunted their whole lives, always running, always hiding. Alone, not anymore. John stood slowly, his hand tightening around the knife. "Not this time," he whispered. Saris's eyes widened. "You fight, you? Human?" John looked at her, his face hard but calm. "Human, yes, but human means we protect. We fight for those who can't." Before Saris could answer, the mine's entrance exploded with light. The vines burned away in a flash, scattering ashes across the ground. The hunters had found them. The three armored figures stepped into the opening, weapons glowing. Their red eyes swept the darkness, locking onto the pale glow of the girl's skin. Alira screamed and clung tighter to Max. Saris stepped in front of her sister, trembling but ready. John moved too, placing himself between the hunters and the children. His knife was small compared to their weapons, but his stance was unshaken. "You want them?" John's voice echoed through the mine. "You'll have to go through me first." The hunters paused. For a brief moment, the world stood still. The man, the dog, the two lost girls, and the monsters that hunted them. The air was thick with tension, every breath sharp, every sound magnified. Then the leader raised its weapon. The hum grew louder, sparks of red energy dancing along its edge. John's grip on his knife tightened. His body shook, but not from fear, from resolve. He had nothing special, no armor, no alien power. But he had something the hunters could never understand. He had humanity. And humanity, when protecting children, could be stronger than any weapon. The mine shook with the echo of the hunters' footsteps. Their red lights cut through the darkness, painting the stone walls with a glow that looked like blood. Alira clutched Max tightly, her small body trembling. Saris stood in front of her sister, teeth clenched, though her hands shook. And John stood between them and the hunters, his old hunting knife shining faintly in the dim light. His body was tense, but his eyes burned with something no machine or monster could copy. Resolve. The lead hunter stepped forward. Its weapon hummed with energy, ready to strike. A metallic voice cracked through the air, sharp and cruel. John didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. "Give them up." John shook his head slowly. "No." His voice was steady, louder than he thought it could be. "They are children, and children are safe with me." The hunters paused. For a moment the silence was so heavy that even the dripping water in the cave seemed to stop. Then with a mechanical growl, the lead hunter raised its weapon higher. John tightened his grip on the knife. He knew the truth. He couldn't win. These creatures had power far beyond him. But some fights were not about winning. Some fights were about standing no matter what came next. Max barked furiously, his teeth bared, ready to defend his family. The sound echoed, brave and defiant. Saris gasped, her glowing eyes wide. She whispered in broken English, "You fight for us?" John glanced back at her, his jaw set. "Always." The words struck something deep inside her. For the first time, the girl's trembling stopped. She had never heard anyone say those words before. The hunters moved closer, their shadows stretching over John. Sparks of red light filled the tunnel. The hum of their weapons grew louder, and then something unexpected happened. Alira, the younger sister, stepped forward. She held Max's fur in one hand. But in her other hand, the small, round, metallic object John had found earlier glowed brighter than ever. Its symbols lit up, pulsing like a heartbeat. The hunters froze. John's eyes widened. "What is that?" Saris's voice trembled with shock. "Beacon. Bloodline. We, not broken. We, heirs." The truth struck like lightning. These girls were not weak, not worthless. They were something greater, something the hunters feared. That was why they chased them. That was why they could never let them live. The beacon glowed stronger, filling the mine with blinding blue light. The hunters staggered back, their red eyes flickering. A metallic scream echoed as their weapons sparked, disrupted by the beacon's power. John shielded his eyes but did not step away from the girls. He stood firm, the light washing over him, making his shadow stretch long against the cave wall. The lead hunter tried to push forward, but its armor cracked under the pressure of the beacon's pulse. The machine stumbled, then collapsed with a heavy crash. The others faltered, retreating into the shadows, their red lights fading as they fled, and then silence. Only the sound of Alira's small sobs and Max's panting filled the air. The beacon dimmed slowly, the glow fading until it looked like a simple coin again. Alira collapsed against her sister, tears running down her silver cheeks. Saris held her tightly, whispering softly in their strange tongue. John lowered his knife. His hand shook, not from fear anymore, but from the storm of emotion inside him. Relief, anger, and something else. Pride. He turned to the sisters, his voice rough. "You're safe now." Saris looked at him, her glowing eyes shimmering. "You, human, you stand. Even when death." John smiled faintly, kneeling so his eyes were level with theirs. "That's what being human means. We don't run when someone needs us." For the first time, Saris's lips curved into a true smile. Alira sniffled, then whispered one word in clear English. "Dad?" John's heart almost stopped. The word pierced deeper than any blade. He felt his throat close, tears stinging his eyes. He had lost his family long ago, but now, maybe he had found something new. He pulled them both gently into his arms. Max wagged his tail, barking happily, circling around them as if celebrating. The forest outside was still dangerous. The hunters would return someday. But at that moment, inside that old mine, John knew he had made his choice. He would protect them. He would fight for them. He would be their family, because sometimes humanity was not about strength or weapons or power. It was about choice, and John had chosen to be human, in the truest, bravest way.